"Look at her hands, Your Honor." My father's voice exploded across the courtroom as he slammed his palm against the table hard enough to shake the water glasses. "They're trembling. That woman is a drug addict. She manipulated my mother and has no business controlling her estate." Every head in the probate courtroom turned toward me. I remained perfectly still. "My name is Mara Ellison. And that morning my family believed they were finally going to destroy me. For years they had painted me as the failure, the unstable daughter, the disappointment, the cautionary tale whispered about at family gatherings. And now, standing before a judge in downtown Boston, they thought they had proof. Across the room, my younger sister Claire dabbed at perfectly dry eyes with a tissue while leaning dramatically against her husband, Grant. Grant looked confident. Too confident. The expensive watch on his wrists sparkled under the courtroom lights. From a distance it looked impressive. Close it looked like a cheap imitation. A fitting metaphor for the man wearing it. For weeks, the two of them had pushed a story through social media, family circles, and legal filings. According to them, I had stolen prescription medication, manipulated my grandmother, taken advantage of an elderly woman in her final years. Their attorney stepped forward and handed a thick packet of documents to the court clerk. Moments later, medical records appeared across the courtroom monitors. The heading read, "Oakview Recovery Center." Page after page described severe drug dependency, psychiatric instability, mandatory rehabilitation stays, long-term substance abuse treatment. The evidence looked devastating. My own attorney glanced toward me nervously. He looked pale, worried, almost defeated. I wasn't, because the moment those records appeared on the screen, I recognized something. Not the accusations, paperwork, the formatting, the billing structure, the identification numbers. I'd seen them before, many times. Judge Lillian Rowe carefully reviewed the documents. The room remained silent. Then her eyes narrowed. She stopped reading, tapped a signature block with one finger, and slowly looked up at my father. "Mr. Ellison," she said calmly, "are you absolutely certain you know what your daughter does for a living?" The question caught him completely off guard. He laughed, a little too loudly, a little too confidently. "She's nobody," he replied. "Some clerical worker who can't keep her life together." The moment those words left his mouth, everything changed. Because that was the mistake. I stood up, walked calmly into the center aisle. And for the first time in years I told the truth. 10 years earlier, when I was 21, I had collapsed from exhaustion while juggling school, work, and family obligations. The emergency room prescribed medication for anxiety and panic attacks. My father found the prescription bottle and immediately decided what story he wanted to tell. He called me an addict, told relatives I was abusing drugs, spread the rumor through the entire family. Then, in front of everyone, he burned my medical paperwork. Just like that, my reputation disappeared. The courtroom sat frozen as I spoke. But I wasn't finished. Because that wasn't the worst thing he'd done. I explained how my father had secretly emptied my college fund, while I was struggling to survive, while I was sleeping in libraries, while I was spending nights in bus terminals after being thrown out of the house. The money that was supposed to fund my education had vanished. Not accidentally. Deliberately. I held up bank records, wire transfers, financial statements. Every document meticulously organized. The records showed exactly where the money went. A luxury country club, a Manhattan bridal boutique, catering company. Expenses connected directly to Claire's extravagant wedding years earlier. Claire immediately jumped to her feet. "That's not true." But the panic in her voice betrayed her. And Grant didn't say a word. His face had already gone pale. Because unlike Claire, he understood financial evidence. And he knew exactly what he was looking at. Then I revealed the part nobody expected. The years after my father abandoned me. The years everyone assumed I disappeared. My grandmother Vivian had found me. Quietly. Without making announcements, without asking for recognition, she paid for my certification exams, my graduate education, my forensic accounting training. She invested in me when nobody else would. And because of her, I became very good at following money, very good at uncovering lies. By the time of her death, I wasn't some broken woman struggling to survive. I was a senior forensic investigator specializing in financial crimes. And when Claire's viral videos started accusing me of fraud and addiction, I didn't argue. I investigated. That's when everything unraveled. The supposed rehabilitation center listed in their evidence wasn't real. Oakview Recovery Center existed only on paper. The employer identification number attached to it traced back to a shell corporation. And that shell corporation belonged to exactly one person, Grant. The courtroom erupted into whispers. The judge immediately called for silence. Continued. The fake rehabilitation center wasn't simply fabricated evidence. It was part of a larger financial network. One connected to Grant's struggling hedge fund. One connected to missing investor money. One connected to an ongoing federal investigation. Without realizing it, Grant had handed me the key that unlocked everything. The forged medical records, the fake invoices, the fabricated treatment history. Every piece of evidence they submitted pointed directly back to him. Suddenly, their entire strategy became obvious. They didn't file the probate challenge because they cared about my grandmother. They filed it because Vivian's will left me 80% of her estate. She had named me executor. And she had deliberately excluded them. The only way they could access that money was by destroying my credibility first. So they tried. And failed. Judge Rowe saw it almost immediately. She ordered the filings reviewed. Minutes later, federal investigators entered the courthouse. Not because they happened to be nearby. Because I had already contacted them. The look on Grant's face was unforgettable. The confidence vanished. The arrogance disappeared. For the first time all morning. He looked afraid. My father looked even worse. Because he finally understood what he'd missed. The daughter he called weak. The daughter he called broken. The daughter he spent years humiliating. Was the same woman quietly building the case that would expose them all. Claire's performance finally ended when investigators requested Grant's phone. Those tears became real. Very real. Judge Rowe revoked the injunction immediately. She referred the forged documents to federal prosecutors. Every account connected to Grant's company was frozen pending investigation. And just before leaving the witness stand, I read one final letter. A letter my grandmother had written shortly before her death. The courtroom fell silent as I read her final words aloud. Let them believe you are nothing. That is when a wolf survives. Nobody spoke after that. There was nothing left to say. When I walked out of the courthouse, I was alone. But for the first time in years, I felt free. The cold wind rolling off the Charles River cut through my coat. Yet somehow I felt warm. Because I hadn't won by screaming. I hadn't won by begging people to believe me. I hadn't won by seeking revenge. I won by waiting. By learning. By gathering facts while everyone else told stories. My family spent years trying to erase me. Trying to turn me into a ghost. Instead,